The message reached Luna Station at 0300 hours Earth Standard Time. Fleet Admiral Daeho Lee was in his office when the encrypted transmission arrived from Ambassador Park. He read it twice, then called an emergency meeting. Within 15 minutes, every senior officer on the base sat around the conference table. Admiral Lee displayed the situation on the holographic projector. 3,000 civilians held hostage by pirates. The Galactic Council paralyzed by bureaucracy. One desperate ambassador asking for help that nobody else would provide. The officers studied the data in silence. They all understood what was not being said directly. This was not an official council request. If Earth intervened, they would be acting alone. Commander Hyunwoo Kim leaned forward in his chair. He commanded the dreadnought Indomitable, the pride of Earth's fleet. His ship had seen action in the border conflicts near the Centauri system. He knew what combat looked like when lives hung in the balance. How long do they have? He asked quietly. Admiral Lee pulled up the pirate transmissions. The videos were brutal. Executed civilians. Burning buildings. Pirates laughing while families screamed. The enemy had already killed 20 hostages and promised 100 more per day. That meant Earth had maybe 3 days before the death toll became catastrophic. 3 days to assemble a fleet. 3 days to travel 10 light years. 3 days to plan an assault on a fortified position, with thousands of civilian lives at stake. It was an impossible timeline by any military standard, but nobody in that room suggested waiting. Nobody suggested letting the council handle it. They had all read the reports. The council would debate for weeks while people died. Admiral Lee made his decision. He authorized Task Force Valkyrie. 3 dreadnought carriers would form the Corps: Indomitable, Resolute, and Valiant. 12 destroyers would provide escort and fire support. 8 stealth ships would handle reconnaissance. 2 hospital ships would prepare for mass casualties. And 4,000 Marines would stand ready for ground assault. The room erupted into organized chaos. Officers pulled up deployment schedules and supply manifests. Communication officers started sending coded messages to every ship in the fleet. Within an hour, Luna Station transformed from a quiet military base into a hive of purposeful activity. Commander Hyunwoo Kim walked through the corridors of the Indomitable, checking systems and crew readiness. His ship was 2 kilometers of reinforced steel and advanced weapon systems. She was not the most technologically impressive vessel in the galaxy. Human ships relied on proven kinetic weapons and robust construction, rather than exotic energy shields. But what the Indomitable lacked in advanced technology, she made up for in reliability and firepower. In the Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Commander So Min-yoon coordinated the tactical planning. She was 32 years old and had never seen action outside of training simulations, but she had studied every major battle in human history. She understood how to coordinate multiple ship movements, how to maximize firepower while minimizing friendly casualties, how to turn chaos into calculated violence. The Marines assembled in the lower decks. Colonel Taeyang Han inspected his troops with a critical eye. These were not parade soldiers. They were veterans of Earth's unification wars, hard men and women who had fought in jungles and cities and orbital stations. They wore powered armor that amplified their strength and protected them from vacuum and fire. They carried weapons designed to function in any environment. Colonel Han briefed them on the mission. They would be rescuing 3,000 aliens from a species they had never met. The hostages would be terrified and possibly injured. The Marines needed to be gentle with civilians while remaining lethal toward any threat. It was a difficult balance, but every Marine in that room had trained for exactly this kind of operation. Dr. Mina Choi set up her workspace in the medical bay. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans who specialized in alien physiology. The Kryn were oxygen breathers like humans, which was fortunate. But their medical needs might be different. She downloaded every available file on Kryn biology and began preparing treatment protocols. If civilians were injured, she needed to be ready. 18 hours after Admiral Lee gave the order, Task Force Valkyrie was ready. 15,000 personnel across multiple ships, all focused on a single mission: save the hostages, stop the pirates, show the galaxy what humanity could do when pushed to act. Back on Harmonic Station, word began to spread. Human ships were mobilizing. Ambassador Velthar received confirmation from Jiwon Park. Help was coming. He wanted to feel relieved, but anxiety gnawed at him. What if the humans failed? What if their primitive weapons were not enough? The pirates had plasma cannons and energy shields. Human ships used metal slugs and chemical explosives. Other council members reacted with confusion or amusement. The Ceralian delegation called it a reckless gesture that would only make things worse. The Thalan military observers watched with professional interest. They remembered their assessment of humanity. This would be an opportunity to see if their warnings were justified. On Tertius 9, the pirates learned about the approaching human fleet. Captain Zor gathered his lieutenants in the colony's command center. They looked at the sensor data and laughed. Humans? The primitives from the Edge world were coming to fight them? This would be entertaining. Zor had been a pirate for 30 years. He had raided dozens of colonies and fought off multiple security forces. He knew how these things worked. The key was projecting overwhelming force. Make the enemy believe resistance was futile. The human fleet would arrive. See his 15 warships in orbit and realize they were outmatched. Then they would negotiate. Maybe he would get his ransom after all. He ordered his ships into defensive positions around the mining colony. He reinforced the ground troops guarding the hostages. He prepared a message to send to the humans when they arrived, explaining exactly how badly outnumbered they were. This would be resolved without a fight. The humans would learn an important lesson about challenging the Void Reavers. Task Force Valkyrie jumped to faster-than-light travel exactly 24 hours after receiving the mission. The fleet moved through the twisted dimensions of hyperspace, crossing light years in hours. Inside the ships, crews ran final checks on weapon systems. Marines reviewed assault plans. Medical teams prepared emergency equipment. Everyone knew what was coming. Commander Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the navigation display count down the distance to Tertius 9. His expression was calm, but his mind ran through 1,000 scenarios. Best case, the pirates surrendered immediately. Worst case, they started executing hostages the moment human ships appeared. Kim had to be ready for both possibilities and everything in between. Lieutenant Commander Yoon sat at her tactical station, double-checking targeting solutions. Chief Engineer Ji-woo Nam monitored the massive engines that pushed the ship through hyperspace. Dr. Choi reviewed medical supplies one more time. Colonel Han led his Marines through final combat checks. Every person on every ship in the fleet focused on their role. They were ready. Humanity had sent its warriors to do what the Galactic Council could not. In 12 hours, the fleet would arrive at Tertius 9. Captain Zor and his pirates were about to learn a hard lesson. They had threatened innocence and expected no consequences. They had dismissed humanity as weak and irrelevant. But humans came from a world where the weak died young. They came from a planet where survival meant fighting every single day against gravity and weather and predators. They had evolved in an environment that punished hesitation and rewarded calculated aggression. The pirates had no idea what was really coming for them. As the fleet approached the edge of the Tertius 9 system, Commander Kim gave a single order. All hands to combat stations. The alarm rang through every corridor. Red lights flashed. Blast doors sealed. Weapon systems powered up. The moment for preparation was over. Now came the test. Aliens regretted their call. When the Deathworlders fleet arrived, the emergency lights flashed red across the Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador Velthar stood at the center podium, his three-fingered hands trembling. Behind him, holographic images showed the horror unfolding on Tertius 9. Smoke rose from burning buildings. Bodies lay in the streets, and everywhere armed figures moved through the mining colony with terrible purpose. The Void Reavers had struck 3 days ago. They came without warning, overwhelming the small security force in minutes. Now 3,000 Kryn civilians were prisoners in their own homes. The pirates had made their demands clear. 10 million credits or they would start killing hostages. 100 per day until someone paid. Velthar looked around the chamber at the gathered ambassadors. 47 species had seats on this council. 47 civilizations with vast resources and advanced technology. But none of them moved to help. They sat in their comfortable chairs and spoke of protocols, of procedures, of the need for unanimous votes before military action could be authorized. Council Elder Praxis spoke in his calm, measured voice. The Ceralian leader had held his position for 200 years. He believed deeply in the power of words over weapons. Violence was never the answer, he always said. There must be a peaceful solution to every problem. But Velthar had watched the latest transmission from the pirates. 20 Kryn workers lined up against a wall. The pirate captain had shot them one by one while the camera recorded. A demonstration, he called it. proof that the Void Reavers were serious. And still the council talked about diplomatic channels and proper procedures. Velthar left the chamber with his hopes crushed. His people were dying, and the galaxy's great council could do nothing but debate. He walked through the station corridors, barely seeing where he went. His mind raced through impossible options. The Kryn Collective had no military to speak of. They were miners and engineers, not soldiers. What could they do against hardened pirates? He found himself in the diplomatic quarter, where smaller offices housed the newer council members. Species who had joined only recently. Species the older members often ignored. And there at the end of a quiet hallway he saw a simple door with Earth's symbol on it. A blue and green planet, beautiful and small. Velthar had heard stories about the humans. They came from the edge of known space, from a world the scientists called a Class 9 death world. Most species evolved on gentle planets with stable climates. But Earth was different. Violent weather, crushing gravity, predators that hunted in packs. The humans had clawed their way to the top of their world's food chain through pure determination. The older species dismissed humanity as primitive. Yes, they had faster-than-light travel now. Yes, they had joined the council. But their weapons were crude kinetic devices. Their ships had no advanced shielding. Their civilization was still so young, barely out of its own wars. What could they possibly offer? But Velthar remembered something he had read in Earth's cultural database. Humans had a saying, "When you have nothing left to lose, you have nothing to fear." Right now, Velthar had nothing left to lose. He knocked on the door. A voice called out an accented standard telling him to enter. Inside, the office was small but efficient. Maps covered the walls showing trade routes and territorial boundaries. A woman sat behind the desk, her dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a simple gray uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood when Velthar entered. She was shorter than most species in the council, but something in her eyes made Velthar pause. He had seen those eyes before, in the faces of soldiers and survivors, eyes that had witnessed terrible things and kept moving forward anyway. She gestured to a chair. Velthar sat heavily, suddenly exhausted. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jiwan poured 2 glasses of clear liquid from a bottle on her desk. She slid one across to Velthar. He took it without thinking, grateful for anything to steady his shaking hands. The human woman studied him carefully. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. What happened in the council chamber today? Velthar told her everything. The pirates, the hostages, the council's endless debates while his people died. He told her about the 20 workers executed on camera, about the 3,000 still trapped, about how time was running out. Jiwan listened without interrupting. When Velthar finished, she asked specific questions. How many pirates? What kind of weapons did they have? Where exactly were the hostages being held? What were the colony's defenses? Velthar answered as best he could, though he wondered why these details mattered. The council had already decided not to act, but Jiwan was not the council. She stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned back to Velthar. Her expression was hard to read, but something had changed in her eyes. A decision had been made. Ambassador Velthar, she said carefully, I need to make a call. Can you give me 6 hours? Velthar felt a spark of something he had not felt in days. It was not quite hope. He was afraid to hope. But it was something close. He nodded and stood to leave. At the door he paused and looked back. Thank you for listening, he said. Most of the council would not even do that. G1 gave him a small smile. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a difficult choice and would see it through no matter the cost. That night, Velthar could not sleep. He sat in his quarters and pulled up Earth's files again. This time he read more carefully. He learned about World War II and the Korean War, about Vietnam and the unification conflicts. He read about human tactics and strategies, about their refusal to surrender even when outnumbered, about their stubborn, relentless determination to protect what they considered theirs. One file caught his attention. It was a military assessment written by the Thalan hegemony when they first encountered humanity. The Thalan were themselves a warrior species, respected throughout the galaxy for their combat prowess. Their assessment of Earth was short and concerning. Humans are born into conditions that would kill most galactic species before adulthood. They survive by adapting, by fighting, by refusing to accept defeat. Their entire civilization is built on conflict and cooperation in equal measure. They are individually weak compared to many species, but they fight as coordinated units with terrifying efficiency. Recommendation: diplomatic engagement only. Military conflict with humanity should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. Velthar read those words 3 times. The Thalan hegemony did not frighten easily. What had they seen in humanity that made them write such a warning? He thought about Ambassador Park's calm questions, her careful attention to tactical details, the calculating look in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, he had knocked on the right door after all. Velthar finally fell asleep as the station's artificial dawn began to brighten his windows. For the first time in 3 days, he dreamed of something other than death and failure. He dreamed of 3,000 civilians walking free under an open sky. He did not know yet that Ambassador Park had already sent her message. He did not know that far away, on a military base orbiting Earth's moon, alarms were sounding and ships were preparing for immediate departure. He did not know that humanity's answer to his desperate request was not a debate or a committee meeting. It was a fleet. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Tertius 9 system. 23 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls still radiating heat from the dimensional transition. On the bridge of the Indomitable, sensors immediately began painting the tactical situation. Lieutenant Commander Somin Yoon studied her displays with focused intensity. 15 pirate vessels in orbit around the planet. Mixed classes, mostly destroyers and frigates. They were positioned in a defensive shell around the mining colony. Smart positioning, she noted. The pirates knew what they were doing. Commander Hyunwoo Kim stood at the center of the bridge. His uniform was crisp, his expression calm. But everyone who served under him recognized that stillness. It was the quiet before action. The moment when a soldier transitions from planning to execution. He spoke into the comm system, his voice carrying to every ship in the fleet. All vessels maintain formation. Proceed to combat distance. The human fleet began moving deeper into the system. They accelerated steadily, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. The pirate sensors picked them up immediately. Alarms sounded on every Void Reaver ship. Crew scrambled to battle stations. Captain Zor settled into his command chair and smiled. The humans had actually come. This would be easier than he thought. Zor opened a communication channel. The human fleet's command frequency was not encrypted. Amateurs, he thought. His face appeared on the view screen of every human ship, scaled and reptilian with 3 eyes that gleamed with arrogance. His voice was mocking when he spoke. Little humans from your little planet. You should not have come here. This is Void Reaver territory. Turn around now and go home, or we will add your ships to our collection. Several pirate officers laughed in the background. Zor enjoyed the moment. Intimidation was half the battle. On the Indomitable, Commander Kim listened without expression. When Zor finished his speech, Kim activated his own camera. His face appeared on every pirate screen. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stated facts in a tone that might have been discussing the weather. Void Reaver vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Council humanitarian law. You have unlawfully detained 3,000 civilians and murdered 20 more. Release all hostages immediately and surrender your ships. You have 10 minutes to comply. This is your only warning. Zor laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of disbelief. These humans were serious. They actually thought they could make demands. He looked at his tactical officer. How many ships do they have? 23, the officer replied. Against our 15. Zor nodded. The humans had numbers, but numbers meant nothing without firepower. He responded with contempt dripping from every word. Your warning is rejected, little human. Now watch what happens to species that challenge the Void Reavers. He cut the transmission and gave his orders. 3 destroyers were to break formation and engage the human fleet. Destroy the lead ship. Show them real power. The 3 pirate destroyers accelerated away from the defensive formation. They were veteran ships scarred from dozens of battles. Their crews were experienced raiders who had never lost a fight. They charged toward the human fleet with plasma torpedoes armed and energy weapons charging. This would be over quickly. On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Commander Yoon tracked the approaching threats. Commander Kim watched the tactical display and spoke quietly. Lieutenant Commander, you may fire when ready. Yoon's fingers moved across her controls. The 10 minutes were not up, but the pirates had made their choice. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for decades. The human fleet did not try to evade. They did not slow down. Instead, every dreadnought and destroyer accelerated directly toward the pirate vessels. At the same moment, the railgun batteries opened fire. Railguns were simple weapons, magnets accelerating metal slugs to incredible speeds. No exotic energy, no dimensional manipulation, just pure kinetic force. The tungsten rounds left the barrels at 3% of light speed. They crossed the distance to the pirate ships in seconds. The pirates had energy shields designed to deflect plasma weapons and lasers. But kinetic rounds were different. The tungsten slugs simply punched through the shields as if they were not there. They hit the pirate destroyers with the force of small asteroids. Hull plating shattered. Internal compartments vented to space. One ship exploded instantly, its reactor breached. Another went dark, all power lost. The third tried to turn away, but missile volleys from human destroyers finished it. Total time elapsed, 47 seconds. 3 pirate destroyers destroyed or crippled, 0 human casualties. Captain Zor stared at his tactical display in disbelief. That was impossible. 3 veteran warships gone in less than a minute. His weapons officer turned to him with panic in his eyes. "Sir, their kinetic weapons punch straight through our shields. We have no defense against them." Zor felt fear for the first time in years. He had raided colonies and fought security forces across a dozen systems. He had never encountered an enemy that fought like this. The humans moved with military precision. Their weapons were devastatingly effective, and they showed no hesitation, no mercy for those who threatened civilians. On Harmonic Station, Ambassador Velthar watched the battle feed with wide eyes. The Galactic Council had assembled to observe humanity's intervention. Most expected to see the human fleet destroyed or turned away. Instead, they were witnessing surgical destruction of pirate vessels. The chamber fell silent. No one knew what to say. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood at the back of the chamber. Her expression gave nothing away, but internally she felt satisfaction. Her people were doing exactly what she knew they could do. Earth's military doctrine was simple: overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Never give the enemy time to adapt. Never let them recover from the initial shock. Commander Kim watched as the pirate formation fell into disarray. Some ships tried to maintain defensive positions. Others began moving away from the planet, preparing to run. But running would not save them. The human fleet was faster, and now that the pirates had fired first, there were no more rules of engagement to worry about. Kim opened a new channel to Captain Zor. His voice remained calm and professional. "Captain Zor, you have seen what will happen if you continue fighting. I am giving you one more chance. Release the hostages immediately and surrender your fleet. If you comply, you will be treated according to the laws of war. If you resist, we will destroy every ship you have and assault the colony by force." Zor looked around his command center. His officers were terrified. His ships were outgunned, but he still had one card to play: the hostages. If he threatened to kill them, surely the humans would back down. Every species in the galaxy valued civilian lives. That was why piracy worked. No one wanted blood on their hands. He composed himself and responded with false confidence. "Commander Kim, if you attack us, we will execute every hostage in this colony. 3,000 lives will be on your conscience." "Is that what your precious Earth wants? To be responsible for a massacre?" There was a long pause. Then Commander Kim spoke again, and this time there was something new in his voice. It was not anger. It was something colder, more absolute. "Captain Zor, if you harm a single hostage, I will personally ensure that no member of your crew survives this engagement. We did not come here to negotiate with terrorists. We came here to end you." Kim closed the channel and turned to Colonel Han's face on the communication screen. "Colonel, execute Operation Thunderbreak. All assault teams deploy immediately." Han's expression was grim. "Understood, Commander. We will bring them home." The screen went dark. In the lower decks of multiple human ships, Marines rushed to their assault shuttles. Colonel Taeyang Han led the first team personally. They wore full combat armor, carried enough ammunition for an extended firefight, and moved with the confidence of soldiers who had done this before. The bay doors opened. The shuttles launched into the darkness, invisible to pirate sensors. The rescue operation had begun. And Captain Zor was about to learn why the galaxy should never, ever threaten human beings under human protection. 8 stealth shuttles fell through the atmosphere of Tertius 9 like silent predators. Their heat signatures were masked by advanced coating. Their engines ran nearly silent. Pirate sensors swept the sky above the mining colony, but they saw nothing. The humans had done this before. Insertion under hostile conditions was something they had perfected through centuries of warfare. Colonel Taeyang Han rode in the lead shuttle with his command team. Through his helmet display, he watched the approach vectors of all 8 teams. They would hit the colony from 8 different entry points simultaneously. Speed and coordination were everything. The longer this took, the more likely pirates would start executing hostages. The shuttles touched down without firing a shot. Marines poured out, moving in tactical formation. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any unaugmented being. Their weapons were loaded with ammunition designed to penetrate body armor, without over-penetrating and hitting civilians behind targets. Every detail had been planned. Lieutenant Bora Shin led Team 3 toward the Eastern Detention Facility. Intelligence suggested 1,200 hostages were held there. Her team moved through the darkened corridors of the mining complex with night vision active. They could see perfectly. The pirates were stumbling around with handheld lights, confused by a sudden power outage that human hackers had triggered moments before insertion. The first pirates died without knowing what hit them. Suppressed weapons fired from the darkness. Bodies dropped. The Marines advanced without breaking stride. They were not here to take prisoners among the guards. These pirates had murdered 20 civilians already. They had threatened 3,000 more. There would be no mercy for them. Sergeant Junho Park breached a locked door with shaped charges. His team flowed through the gap with weapons ready. Inside, 6 pirates were guarding a group of terrified Kryn civilians. The pirates spun toward the explosion, reaching for weapons. They never got the chance. Park's team fired with perfect precision. 6 shots, 6 kills. The civilians screamed and huddled together. Park removed his helmet so the Kryn could see his face. He spoke in broken standard, the universal language most species understood. We are human. From Earth we come to help. No fear, stay low. Follow us. The Kryn stared at him in shock. These armored warriors were the humans everyone dismissed as primitive, the ones who had just killed 6 armed pirates in seconds. Lieutenant Shin reached the main detention center. 1,200 Kryn civilians were locked inside a large warehouse structure. 20 pirates guarded the doors with heavy weapons. Shin signaled her team. They moved into position around the building. Snipers took aim through windows. Breach teams prepared explosives at 3 different doors. Shin counted down on her hand. 3, 2, 1. The doors exploded inward simultaneously. Flash grenades detonated, blinding and deafening the guards. Marines rushed through the smoke with weapons firing. The pirates tried to fight back, but they were outmatched in every way. Human reflexes enhanced by powered armor. Human training refined through generations. Human determination to protect the innocent. In 40 seconds, every pirate guard was down. Shin moved among the hostages, her voice calm despite the violence that had just occurred. You are safe now. We are taking you home. Medical teams are waiting. Stay together and stay calm. The Kryn looked at her with something between fear and hope. One elderly Kryn approached slowly and reached out with a shaking hand to touch her armor. Are you real? He whispered. Shin smiled gently. We are very real, and we are not leaving without you. While the Marines secured hostages across the colony, Colonel Han led his team toward the command center. Intelligence indicated that Captain Zor had fortified himself there with his elite guard and approximately 100 remaining hostages. This would be the hardest fight. Zor knew he was finished. Cornered enemies were always the most dangerous. The command center was a reinforced structure at the heart of the colony. Heavy blast doors, multiple defensive positions. Zor had set up a killing field in the approaches. Han studied the layout through his tactical display. A frontal assault would cost lives. But they did not have time for a siege. In orbit, the space battle continued. Human ships were methodically destroying pirate vessels, but Zor might give a final order to kill hostages before he died. Han made a decision. Half his team would make noise at the front entrance, drawing attention. The other half would breach through the ceiling using cutting torches. It was dangerous. It required perfect timing, but Marines trained for exactly these situations. Han gave his orders. Teams moved into position. The clock was ticking. The frontal assault began with a barrage of grenades and suppressing fire. Pirates behind cover returned fire. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. The human Marines absorbed hits on their armor and kept advancing. Meanwhile, on the roof, the second team burned through reinforced metal with plasma torches. The hole widened. Marines prepared to drop into the enemy command center. Inside the command center, Captain Zor watched his defenses hold. The humans were tough, but they would not breach his position easily. He had hostages surrounding his command chair. Let the humans try to shoot through innocent civilians. He turned to his communication officer. Send a message to their commander. Tell him I will start executing hostages unless they withdraw immediately. The ceiling exploded inward. Marines dropped through the hole on rappelling lines, firing as they descended. Pirates spun in confusion. Which threat do they engage? The ones at the door or the ones dropping from above? In that moment of hesitation, the Marines took control. Precision shots eliminated guards. Zor grabbed a hostage and pulled a pistol to the Kryn civilian's head. Colonel Han entered through the smoke. His armor was scorched but intact. His weapon was trained on Zor, but he could not shoot without hitting the hostage. Zor smiled viciously. Not so easy now, is it, human? You should have stayed home. You should have let us have what we wanted. Now this one dies because of your interference. Sergeant Park had entered from the opposite side. He saw the situation from an angle. Through a narrow gap between other hostages, he could see part of Zor's weapon arm. It was an impossible shot. Any miss would kill a civilian. But Park had trained for this his entire life. He had fired millions of rounds in practice. He knew exactly what his rifle could do. He took the shot. The round passed through the gap with millimeters to spare. It hit Zor's wrist, shattering bone. The pirate captain screamed and dropped his pistol. The hostage broke free. 3 Marines grabbed Zor and slammed him to the ground. Restraints went on his wrists and ankles. It was over. The pirate captain who had murdered 20 civilians and threatened 3,000 more was now a prisoner. Colonel Han stood over Zor. The pirate looked up at him with hatred and fear mixed together. "What are you?" he gasped. "You fight like demons. Nothing stops you." Han's voice was cold when he replied. "We are humans. We are from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to survive by being better than everything that hunted us. You made a mistake when you threatened innocent people. We do not forgive that." Reports came in from all teams. All hostage locations secured. Casualties were minimal. 3,000 Kryn civilians were safe. Medical teams were already treating injuries. Transport shuttles were landing to evacuate everyone to the human hospital ships. The ground operation had taken less than 2 hours from insertion to completion. In orbit, the space battle reached its conclusion. Of 15 pirate vessels, 11 were destroyed or disabled. 4 tried to flee, but human destroyers intercepted them. Faced with certain destruction, the surviving pirates surrendered. Commander Kim accepted their surrender but kept weapons trained on them. Trust had to be earned. Pirates had earned nothing but suspicion. Dr. Mina Choi worked in the medical bay of the Indomitable, treating injured Kryn civilians. She had prepared well. Her knowledge of Kryn physiology allowed her to provide effective care. Many civilians were dehydrated and malnourished after days of captivity. Some had injuries from pirate abuse, but they would all survive. Choi worked steadily, moving from patient to patient with gentle efficiency. One young Kryn female, barely an adult, watched Choi work with wide eyes. "You came from so far away," she said quietly. "You did not know us. Why did you come?" Choi paused and met her eyes. "Because you needed help and we could give it. That is reason enough." The young Kryn began to cry, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. Commander Kim stood on the bridge and reviewed the final casualty reports. 8 Marines killed in action, 23 wounded, 37 Kryn civilians dead, killed by pirates before the rescue. 3,000 rescued and safe. It was not a perfect outcome. Every death weighed on him. But thousands were alive who would have died without intervention. That had to count for something. He opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. "This is Commander Kim. The mission is complete. All hostages are secure. All enemy forces are neutralized or captured. You have performed with exceptional courage and skill. Earth is proud of you." The sailors and Marines would live up to their reputation. The galaxy was watching, and now the galaxy knew. Humanity protected its own, and anyone under human protection became one of their own. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity had done in 72 hours what the Galactic Council could not do in weeks. 3,000 civilians rescued. A pirate fleet destroyed. 0 hostages killed during the rescue operation. The numbers told a story that shocked every species in Council space. On Harmonic Station, the Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Ambassadors from 47 species argued over what humanity's intervention meant. Some praised the rescue. Others condemned the violence. Everyone had an opinion. But they all shared one thing. They could no longer dismiss Earth as irrelevant. Ambassador Vell there stood before the council and delivered an emotional address. His voice shook with gratitude and barely controlled anger. 3,000 of my people are alive today because humanity acted. We came to this council begging for help. You gave us debates and procedures. The humans gave us action. They asked for nothing in return. No payment, no territory. They simply saved lives because it was the right thing to do. Council Elder Praxis tried to maintain order. He spoke in his measured, careful way. The Cerealian leader believed violence only created more violence. Ambassador Vell, we understand your gratitude, but the humans acted without council authorization. They used extreme force. What happens next time? What if humanity decides to intervene in situations where force is not the answer? Ambassador Ji-won Park rose from her seat. She had been silent until now, letting others debate. But Praxis had challenged Earth's actions directly. She needed to respond. Her voice was calm, but carried an edge that made others listen. Elder Praxis asks what happens next time. I can answer that. Next time civilians are threatened and the council fails to act, humanity will act again. Because remember what it is like to be helpless. We remember what it is like to watch innocents die while powerful people debate. The chamber fell silent. Ji-won continued. Earth did not ask for your permission because we knew what your answer would be. More committees. More studies. More procedures. Meanwhile, Peopledy, we will not apologize for saving lives. If that makes us dangerous in your eyes, then perhaps you should examine why action frightens you more than inaction. Several ambassadors began speaking at once. The Thalan representative stood and raised a hand for silence. The Thalan were a military species who understood warfare. Their ambassador spoke with the authority of someone who knew exactly what Earth had accomplished. The humans demonstrated tactical superiority in every phase of this operation. Space combat, orbital insertion, ground assault, hostage rescue. Their casualty ratio was exceptional. We should not fear this capability. We should respect it. Behind the public debates, intelligence agencies scrambled to reassess Earth. Analysts pulled every available file on human history and military capability. What they found disturbed many species. Humans had fought continuously for thousands of years. They had refined warfare into a science. Every major conflict taught them lessons that they incorporated into doctrine. By the time they reached space, humanity had accumulated more combat experience than most species gained in their entire existence. One analyst for the Cerealian Intelligence Service wrote a report that would become infamous. Humans evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, limited resources. They survived by becoming the most efficient killers their world had ever seen. Then they turned that capability inward and nearly destroyed themselves in global wars. But they learned. They created peace not by abandoning their nature, but by channeling it toward protection instead of conquest. This makes them unique in the galaxy. They have both the capability for violence and the wisdom to restrain it. Until someone threatens the innocent, then they become what their world made them. Apex predators defending their pack. The report was classified immediately, but copies leaked. Other species read it and felt a chill. The galaxy had welcomed humanity thinking they were weak. Now they understood the truth. Humans were not weak. They were restrained. There was a difference. A crucial difference. Media coverage of the rescue dominated every news network. Footage of human Marines protecting civilians spread across dozens of worlds. Images of Dr. Choi treating wounded Kryn with gentle care. Video of Commander Kim standing on his bridge, calm and professional while directing a battle. The galaxy saw humans not as primitive barbarians, but as disciplined warriors with a code of honor. The phrase Deathworlders took on new meaning. Before, it was a dismissive term, a way to mark humans as coming from a harsh, unimportant planet. Now it became something else. A recognition of capability, a warning. The Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. They had proven that in blood and fire. The Void Reavers organization collapsed completely. Captain Zor and his captured lieutenants faced trial before a galactic court, but the damage to pirate morale went deeper than one trial. Word spread through the criminal underworld. The humans had destroyed an entire pirate fleet in hours. They had assaulted a fortified position and won without losing a single hostage. Pirates who had operated with impunity for years suddenly looked over their shoulders. What if the humans came for them next? Several pirate captains began negotiating surrenders. They turned themselves into council authorities rather than risk human intervention. Merchant shipping lanes that had been dangerous for decades became noticeably safer. Insurance rates dropped. Trade increased. All because pirates feared what the Deathworlders might do if provoked. On Tertius 9, the Kryn Collective began rebuilding their colony with human assistance. Engineering teams from Earth helped restore damaged infrastructure. Medical personnel stayed to ensure all civilians recovered fully. The Kryn watched these humans work alongside them and marveled. These were the same people who had stormed through their colony, killing pirates with ruthless efficiency. But they were also gentle helpers who showed patience with traumatized civilians. One Kryn elder approached Colonel Han as the Marines prepared to return to their ships. The old Kryn had lost 2 children to the pirates. He looked up at the human soldier with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered in broken standard. "Thank you for caring about people you never met." Han removed his helmet and knelt so they were at eye level. "Your children deserved better than what happened to them. We are sorry we could not save them all, but we saved everyone we could." The elder embraced him, and Han held the old Kryn gently, careful of his strength. Back on the Indomitable, Commander Kim held a memorial service for the 8 Marines who haddied in combat. The crew assembled in dress uniforms. Kim spoke about each fallen warrior, their names, their service, their sacrifice. He reminded everyone that freedom and safety had a price. These 8 had paid that price so 3,000 others could live. The ship was silent except for his voice. When the service ended, the crew saluted and dispersed. There was work to do. There always was. Dr. Choi finished treating her last patient and sat alone in the medical bay. She was exhausted but satisfied. She had saved lives today, helped heal both bodies and trauma, but she also thought about the violence that had made her work necessary. Humans were capable of such tenderness and such brutality. Most species did not understand how both could exist in the same being. But Choi understood. Humanity had learned to be fierce protectors precisely because they valued life so deeply. You did not fight that hard unless you cared that much. On Harmonic Station, Ambassador Park met privately with several species who had approached her after the council session. They wanted security agreements with Earth, military advisors, training programs. The galaxy was suddenly very interested in human military expertise. Park listened to their requests carefully. She would forward them to Earth's government, but she also offered advice. Humanity will help those who ask, but we will not impose our methods on anyone. And we will not become the galaxy's mercenary force. We act to protect, not for profit. Elder Praxis requested a private meeting with Park. She accepted, curious what the cautious Ceralian leader wanted. They met in a neutral conference room. Praxis looked older than usual, tired. He spoke quietly. "Ambassador Park, I owe you an apology. The council failed in its duty. We let protocols and procedures blind us to the suffering of innocents. You showed us what decisive action looks like. I am still troubled by the violence, but I cannot deny the results. 3,000 lives saved. I cannot argue with that." Park studied him carefully. Elder Praxis, humanity learned through bitter experience that sometimes violence is necessary. We do not celebrate it. We do not seek it. But when evil acts without restraint, good must respond with strength. Peace is precious, but peace purchased by allowing innocents to suffer is not really peace. It is just cowardice dressed in philosophy. Praxis nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps the council has forgotten that our peace exists because someone is willing to fight for it." He paused, then looked at her directly. "What happens now, Ambassador? Will Earth become a military power in council space? Will you seek to dominate?" Park shook her head. "Earth wants to be a good neighbor. We will help when asked. We will defend the innocent when we can. But we have no interest in empire. We nearly destroyed ourselves pursuing power. We learned that lesson. We just want to live in peace and help others do the same." As the human fleet prepared to return home,